I have a dream, oh, I have a dream. Red, white, and blue, fly free, fly free. I believe, oh, I believe. Will you dream with me?
Welcome to Changing Times, everyone. It is Wednesday, March the 27th. This is show number 153. We are almost to a 3-year point. So we are live at Axe Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri. And I am Lynn Morris, and this is Dr. Mary Byrne, our co-host, assistant co-host, co-host. I don't know why I can't say that. And we've got a tremendous guest today. General Flynn, are you on the air now?
I sure am, Dr. Burns and Lynn. I really appreciate a few minutes of your time here this morning.
Well, we know you are a very, very busy man, and so we appreciate the time that we're going to have to spend with you. I hope that we can enlighten and educate and tell the truth about a lot of things that's been going on in your life and in our country. And so right now we're going to just pause and do a 60-second video on your new documentary that's getting ready to start in April. And then we're going to come right back and go live and visit with you, okay?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
War is this massive racket. I mean, we are at war constantly. Peace is the aberration, and war is the norm. So if I was to give a grade, like you get in grade school, right? I give us an A+ for participating in these never-ending wars. I give us an F for winning. When we fast forward to today, really from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 9/11, and the wars that we're constantly at, and you tell me when we weren't at war, for those that are running our country, they want this perpetuation of war, and you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose? All we're doing is we are spending. There are those that are profiting, and there are those that are sacrificing. War is the easiest racket.
Very good. So, General Flynn, I really like the comments you made on the video about wars. Dr. Mary Byrne and I were talking. I had done research on you and your professional career in the military, and I came across it again that you talked about all the wars that we fought in the last, let's say, 20 or 30 years, where we didn't win them. We really never won them, and it cost a lot of money. Really helped put us in debt, serious debt, and then it also just harmed so many young men and women, and either led to their death or been hurt for the rest of their life and just changed their lives. So I really appreciate your comment, because that's not what we hear with some of the generals and people that's giving advice to presidents. And so I think that you're right on track on that. So you've been in the military, what is it, 35 years or 33 years?
Just over 33 years.
Okay, over 33 years, and you're a 3-star general, and I'm telling you, you are probably one of the smartest, and I don't know why. Well, I kind of know why, because Dr. Mary Byrne and I, we deal with this all the time. We got half the country divided. Half the country thinks that you're a hero, and you are a hero, American hero, and then also we got half the country that think you're not. For us at this table, right here at this studio, you are a difference maker. Every time we do a show, we have difference makers on our show. We talk about social issues, social causes, and you're a difference maker. And then Don Blackard, that used to be my co-host, she would always say, being the change. You are being the change for this country. And so we do applaud you and thank you for that. Well, I'm going to get into just and also, by the way, people, General Flynn, they're watching you and us in all 50 states and around the world. We have other countries, sometimes 10, 12, 16 countries besides people in all 50 states. So you're being watched today. So, let's talk about the documentary, the Flynn documentary that's going to come out in April. Why did you decide to do this right now? This documentary right now in April. Why did you decide to do this?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for all that you just said. It really is meaningful, and it means more than you know. And for your audience that does watch this, but whether it's here in the United States or whether it's overseas, I think that everyone that sees this documentary will be stunned at the revelations that will come out of it. There are many things that I have not spoken about or spoken to since everything sort of since the persecution of my family and I, and this documentary will bring a lot of that out. One of the things that is very telling in the trailer or the teaser that you just showed is this idea of warfare. And, a lot of people have said over the years, Flynn knows where the bodies are buried. And that's a very, very true statement. And you don't get to the levels that I got to in the military, nor do you rise to the level of national security advisor to a duly elected president of the United States without having knowledge of both foreign and domestic affairs of our government. And unlike anybody else that was around President Trump in 2016 or 2017, in the early days of 2017, nobody had my background. In fact, very few people, very few national security advisors, to include Henry Kissinger, going back at least that far, have had my background. None of them ever led one of the largest intel agencies in the world, and at the same time also rose to the highest levels of our military, particularly the intelligence community, nor worked at the national intelligence level, nor served 5 years of my life in combat operations overseas. So that accumulation, plus the fact that I'm also a student of our country. I'm a student of world history. I'll speak a little bit about myself, which is very unusual, but I'll do it for your audience because, as you say, there's, half of your audience has no idea what to think of Mike Flynn. I have 3 master's degrees, and all of them have to do with different issues that deal with our country, particularly all the things that are happening right now. I also come from a family of 9 children. My father was a World War II and a Korean War veteran. Most of my family served in the military. Even both my grandfathers served in World War I, and one of my grandfathers served in both World War I and World War II. We came from a Democrat family, so we were Democrats our whole lives. And I just recently changed parties just because I moved to another state, and as I reflected on everything going on in the country, I said, I think I'm gonna go this way, because I never really, I was gonna say I never really cared about politics, but I did care about politics, but I never really got involved in politics as a military officer, because I took an oath to the country. I took an oath of office, and I really didn't want to go and vote for president of the United States, because regardless of who it was, that person was going to be my commander in chief, especially as I rose in the ranks up to and including a general officer. So I think if people really, if they go and watch this movie, they're going to walk away with all kinds of like, oh my God, I did not know that. Not just about Mike Flynn and Mike Flynn's family, but about our country. There are aspects that I speak to in this film that have to do with the persecution of not just Mike Flynn, but many, many people in our country, and how the corruption has really risen inside of our system of government. And as everybody knows, anybody in this country that feels that they still have, the first 10 amendments, then certainly the first one, which has 5 parts. Most people don't even know about that. We talk quite a bit about these issues in the in the movie so people understand, what is at risk. There's so much at risk there, Lynn and Dr. Burns. There's so much at risk. Our nation, like many other empires in the history of the world, has a lifespan, and we don't know what the end date is. We can't, if you're a believer and you're somebody with strong faith, then you just have faith in God that that the end times are going to be up to God Almighty. Can we influence that? Can we have an impact on that about how we operate morally and ethically? Absolutely. Our country is in a moral decline and has been for many, many decades. You said that we haven't won a war. I say it in the movie. We haven't, won a war. But what you said is in the last 20, 25 years, we haven't won a war since World War II. And many of the wars that we got involved in post-World War II, our own country got us involved in those based on a lie. So the Vietnam War is probably the starkest example that we entered that war based on a lie. And we have close to 60,000 killed in action, many, hundreds of thousands wounded or had all kinds of post-traumatic stress. The Iraq war was based on a lie, and I do talk about these things in the movie. So Afghanistan, not so much. We overstayed our time there. We did not have clear objectives. But Iraq, we went into Iraq based on a complete lie, and by our own government. So, and I spent damn near 3 years in Iraq. So these are the kinds of issues that come out in this film. And like the subtitle says, and I'll stop here, like the subtitle says, deliver the truth, whatever the cost. This movie is going to cost me. Okay. So, and I'm going to go around the country on a 35 city tour starting next Friday, April 5th. We're starting here in Florida. I'm going to go around. We're going to touch about 40 states in about 2 months. I will be at every single event. I want people to hear it from me. I will be there to show them the movie and then to discuss questions and answers, because I think people still have a lot of questions that need to be answered, not only about me, but I think about what's happening with our country. And that's why I specifically chose this moment in time in U.S. history to show this film now. I could have done this 2 years ago, could have done this, at another time, a year from now. But I decided, no, our country is in such a state of uncertainty, and there is actually a palpable level of fear in our society. And I want to bring a sense of fearlessness and a sense of courage to the American people. And I do believe that this film does that. So thank you for allowing me to make some opening remarks on your show here today.
Well, so General Flynn, I know you're hoping, and I'm hoping too, that all these skeptics, this half of the country that don't believe you, don't believe a lot of things that are really true. There's always a truth and a non-truth. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people believing non-truths, and they get it all mixed up. But I'm hoping that your movie will help change some minds. If they would go in with an open mind, just a little bit of an open mind, you might be able to convince them, because I know that you're telling the truth. And I believe this is part of God's plan. And so I think this is okay that you do that. Something else that I thought was interesting, and some things I read about the movie and everything, was you have a lot of faith. You have a strong faith. Your family has a strong faith. That's always the important base. You have to have that. But then you also complimented the American people about having a faith and a strong faith and belief and believing in you and supporting you. You had a lot of, during your time of persecution, which is just unfathomable how that could even happen. Couldn't happen probably 100 years ago, but it's like you said, Dr. Mary Byrne and I have been talking about different things, education, different platforms that's going on in this country. We are declining. It's been a purpose, a plan inside our country, outside our country, to take over our country to a one world government. And when you started exposing the truth, you saw what happened. and it's just not right. But you had a lot of faith in the American people, right?
Yeah, I saw a clip where you were called the most dangerous man Trump could have hired for the national security advisor. And maybe it's because you knew where the bodies were buried, but I believe that it's because you're a truth teller, and the powers that have been pulling the levers in Washington, D.C. don't want that truth. So they had to smear you. And I know that because I fight on a different front. I fight in the social wars of education. And I know that for 100 years, there's been an infiltration into Washington and into the education system to control the narrative. And that's exactly what the media does. It controls the narrative. And a lot of the fear is because the enemy has been vague and ambient, and nobody could wrap their heads around it. And you identify them. So you are dangerous.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. Lynn, my father used to, and this has to do with faith, right? Faith in the American people, faith in our country, faith in ourselves, faith in our families. My father he taught us a phrase, and it was to get us out of bed in the morning, to kick us in the rear end and get us out the door to go deliver newspapers or to go to whatever jobs we had when we were little kids, And I mean that. And I mean, he was a tough Irish guy, World War II, Korea vet, and retired from the Army as a sergeant. He grew up in a tough neighborhood of his own as an Irish kid. But he taught us this phrase: the older I get, the smarter my father becomes. The older I get, the smarter my father becomes. And if there is a phrase that if I could teach every single young person and get them to remember that as they got older, that is probably one of the wisest counsels that I took away as a young person, being told by my father, who was at home and was a good man, a good father. And he would kick us out of, he'd get us out of the house in the morning to go to either get to school on time, as Dr. Mary's talking about, but also to get to a job if we had a job. In fact, to go get a job, especially when you could go do one. Even delivering newspapers, I was delivering newspapers at probably the age of about 8 or 9 years old in my neighborhood. But this phrase, the older I get, the smarter my father becomes, has to do with faith. It has to do with knowing that as a young person, you are going to live in a world where you're going to be tested and tried, and you're going to learn, and you're going to learn good and you're going to learn bad things. It doesn't mean that you stop. It doesn't mean that you throw away the bad things. It just means that you remember them, but you take away the good in everything that you learn in life, and you take it and you put it into your little kit bag or your pocket or however you want to describe that, and you move forward in life. And as you get older, especially if you're blessed to be able to have a long, healthy life, as you get older and you have your own family, you get married, you go through all the trials of life. As one gets older, you start to realize, wow, what is really most important in my life, and for me, this was a huge realization, was my faith. Principally, not just my faith, and I'm a Catholic. I grew up as a Catholic kid. Not just my faith as a Catholic, but my faith in myself. And really, truly understanding myself. Like my mom used to say, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. So I've been called every single potential name in the book, every name in the book. My name, General Michael Flynn, was the most Googled name in the world for 2 years in a row. And it still is a pretty high up there in the world of names and name recognition. And I was called every name in the book, but I always knew what my mother and my father taught me. And if I was 25 years old or 20 years old or 30 years old, maybe at that age, I probably wouldn't have reflected on it as much as I have as I've gotten older. And now I have a whole set of life experiences, not only growing up in a tough family with great brothers and sisters, but also joining the military and serving for nearly 3.5 decades of my life in combat with some of the greatest servants on the planet, people who are willing to give their lives for their country, and then recognizing in myself why it was that they feared me so much. And you mentioned the truth, Lynn. There's actually an old sergeant a long time ago was teaching me when I was a young officer, because I had, what we call in the military UCMJ authorities as a company commander, Uniform Code of Military Justice, where you can now start taking action and you have authority over somebody's life, especially as a young officer. And the sergeant, a good old first sergeant, Vietnam veteran who I had, his first name was Larry, great guy. He said, there's three sides of the truth. There's that guy's side, there's your side, and then there's the truth. And I think that is very good guidance. And how do you get to the truth? You get to the truth through discernment, through judgment, through experience, through research, and through investigating and really trying to discover what is the truth. And maybe you'll never find it. Maybe you never actually get there, but you can get very, very close. And so one of the things that I did with this film was I really did the discernment, the judgment, the research, the leveraging of people that did know me but didn't necessarily like me, but then they saw the light, so to speak, and that's Tucker Carlson. He plays a prominent role in this film. Devin Nunes, who's another individual who I met him in Iraq when he visited when he was a congressman, and he came directly to me to find out why we were being so successful on the battlefield. And then, of course, members of my family, and then other journalists who I call, they're the really good journalists these days. They're not the ones that write nice articles about Mike Flynn. They're journalists who dig for the truth. And there's a couple of them in there, as well as some lawyers. I've got some lawyers in there who say things that are very, very, very powerful and very factual. So I think as we go forward as a nation, because this is really why this movie is out now, people can go to flynnmovie.com, and there's a new trailer up now, and they can see where I'm going to be around the country. They can purchase, the DVDs online there. The DVDs have bonus material, which is really good. You're only going to find the bonus material on those DVDs. We're a number one. To give you an idea about where the head of the American people is right now, we remain number one on Amazon for DVD sales, ahead of Aquaman, Barbie, and Willy Wonka 2. And those three movies are being advertised on some very, very big shows like the March Madness. All March Madness commercials are advertising those three films, right? I can't do that because they would never allow me to do that. I'm doing it with shows like yours, podcasters, myself on social media, and just trying my hardest to get the word out on this very important, historically consequential film. And I think what people are hungry for in this country is the truth. They are hungry for the truth because they're afraid of what they're seeing on a daily basis happening to our country. And I do very much believe, and I think that there's a lot in the Bible. I'm not an expert on the Bible at all. I always get in trouble when I talk about the Bible, but I do believe that in our country we are experiencing a massive moral decay, and have been for many, many years. And Dr. Mary, you mentioned education. That is where it all began. It began in the education of our children, back in public schools, way back, when there was an infiltration of people that don't have our best interests, and definitely don't have the best interests of our children. I mean, when did we ever think that we would be trying to have some body of our country normalize drag queen hour for elementary school children? I mean, the fact that I am even saying that on your show, and we are having that debate in this country, tells you how far down this spiral decline that we have gone. And that's one of the sort of the essence of a theme in this movie is family, and the strength of family, and the commitment of family, and the bonding of family coming together during a tough time. And America is going through this tough time right now. And the big message in this film is, if my family can come through and can come together like we came together to fight back, we say to fight like a Flynn, then America can stand up and speak out now against this moral decline that we are facing in our government, in our country, and we can take this country back and get us back on the rails of being a morally, ethically lawful constitutional republic where there is an equality for us all, not just for one side. So, I think that's a very, very important theme. Those are themes that come out of this film.
Well, as a military expert, you know how important it is to get the enemy's playbook. And one of the things that's not being taught well is the Communist Manifesto by Marx and Engels,
Right.
because it specifically says abolition of the family is the centerpiece of how they're going to level society and get control of children's minds. And so,
Yeah.
yes, it is well orchestrated. It is well organized. There is a blueprint. This is not humanity sliding off a cliff because of dereliction of duty. There's been a concerted effort to propagandize, and they've been using the schools to do it. And so we do have, you know, the Tavistock Institute in England, and how instrumental it was in World War II. That institute is still up and functioning, and the clinic, the whole Tavistock Clinic, has been instrumental in the transgender operations.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. You know,
yes.
and I'm sorry.
Well,
thought you had
no, I'm
finished.
just saying we've got the same enemy. They're just using different
Yeah.
fronts, and you have the military front, I have the education front. And
you know,
so I
and
appreciate what you do.
thank you, Mary. I'm sorry just because of the delay. I apologize. So I want people to understand that, education in the military, just because I'm a military guy doesn't mean we stop our education, nor have I not been an educator in our military. So I want people to understand that you get to the level that I got to, you have a wealth and breadth of experiences in training, educating, informing, deciding, leading, all these different kinds of things, right? These institutions, and definitely large numbers of people. I've led from 20 to 20,000 in my military experiences. But I want people to understand that what Dr. Mary Burns is talking about, in the post World War I, in the 1920s, early 1920s, certainly the rise of what's called the Bolshevik Revolution occurred then, and it reared its head then. I mean, a guy by the name of Trotsky spoke at Madison Square Garden in New York City. He basically stood up, Jewish guy, by the way, he stood up the Communist Party of America. Stalin ended up having him killed at the embassy in Mexico a few years later by putting a nail through his head. I mean, so that's the viciousness of people who are perceived as enemies, because Trotsky was a guy who could actually rally an audience, and he had good leadership skills. So Stalin used him, and he brought him back to Eastern Europe at the time to basically get some of the other countries behind what Stalin wanted to do, which was to basically, take over and use communism as the means, Marxism at the time and communism. So this is in the early 1920s. Well, here we are 100 years later. Okay, so I'm gonna do some leaps of faith here with you guys in your audience. But here we are 100 years later, and we have people like Stalin via the Bolshevik Revolution. We have people like Hitler via the rise of fascism, which is actually, fascism is a form of socialism. It's not what I've been described as a fascist. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm so far from being a fascist. So the rise of Hitler, and then the rise of Mao Zedong in China, the rise of Pol Pot, the rise of Idi Amin in Africa, the rise of other dictators in the world in the period of time that I am now talking about, 100 years. I just met an individual about 3 weeks ago that was 107 years old. So, half of the time frame that I am describing now, I was alive. I was born in 1958. Okay, so I was alive in half the time that I am addressing now. In that period of time, well over 100 million citizens of these people that I just described, of their own countries, were murdered by them. Okay, whether
Yes.
it was Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, it doesn't matter who these madmen are, but they have this proclivity to kill their own in order to take power. So, and this is not 1,000 years ago when savages lived, right? This is within the last 100 years, right? The Industrial Revolution, right? The rise of modernity, all these things. Well, we're in the third decade of the 21st century right now, and in America, and again, I talk about this in the movie, and America has been in this endless war, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we just spent 2 decades in the Middle East, in Afghanistan and Iraq, but guess what, folks? We're still there. We are still there. We're still deep in the Middle East. We're now having soldiers killed again in the Middle East. We are about to get into a World War III in Europe, where I've never talked about nuclear weapons like I've talked about in the last 4 to 6 months, probably, the exchange of nuclear weapons. I mean, we have the Russia blaming the United States, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine for this latest terrorist attack. We still don't know the outcome of this event in this incident in Baltimore. I mean, there's all kinds of speculation, the invasion of our country. And then I'm going to take it all back, Mary, and thank you for letting me call you Mary. But I'm going to take it all back to education. The education system in our country is completely lost. And it's lost because the federal government took the education system over because they knew these people that infiltrated, particularly after World War II, into our federal government. And believe me, you can go look at the Eisenhower administration. You can go look at the Truman administration. You can go look at the Johnson administration, even parts of the Kennedy administration, and look at where these people's backgrounds were and who they were. These are in some cases hardcore communists. And so you have to say to yourself, okay, so why did they eventually choose one party instead of going after the other? They chose the Democrat Party. And again, I grew up as a Democrat. I never knew these things because I didn't start studying them until after I finished my time, my sort of tactical time in the military, when I became a real strategist. And I started to really think deeply and more in a much more discerned way about the direction that our country was going. And in the tail end of my career, and I talk about this in detail in the movie, in the tail end of my career, number one, why me? Why did I get to that level? And number two, why did they go after me? Why did they go after me? Because I saw the writing on the wall. And the writing on the wall is like glued to the wall. That wall cannot be washed off with soap and hot water. That wall is going to have to be knocked down, and we're going to have to get ourselves back on a path. And I do think that the Christian community, this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian principles and values. We should be fearless about that. But I do believe that if the Christian community in this country does not wake up and get involved in the election processes and systems of our country, we will not have a country. And therefore, the Christians in this country, the pastors will turn into, like many of them already are, businesses instead of places where they teach and educate about the issues of the day and about how the Bible is a fulfillment of a whole set of promises called the Ten Commandments, and how that relates to our Constitution, which is also a fulfillment of promises in our Bill of Rights. That's what our pastors and ministers and leaders in our church community should do. Don't hold your breath. If you're a Catholic, don't hold your breath that the Catholic Church is going to do that. The Catholic lay people can do that. But I can tell you, in the other ecumenical faiths that we have, if the Christians don't wake up in this country and get out there and vote, and there's too many of them that are not registered, and there's too many of them that don't vote. And that now I'm getting into the solutions about how do we get our country back. So you got me on a soapbox there, Lynn. Thank you.
I'll tell you what, General Flynn, we're going to talk about solutions, because this show always talks about the issue and then solutions. So I'm glad you said that. And we're going to take a real quick break. Do not go anywhere. We're just going to talk about 2 sponsors that we've had since the beginning. We've almost 3 years, and we have 2 sponsors that have been here the whole time with us. We appreciate them. Brad Pistow is a certified fiduciary financial planner located in Ozark, Missouri. He's the owner of Trinity Insurance and Financial Services, and he is actually he travels all over the country, speaks all over, just like you, General Flynn. He's an extremely busy guy, and he wants to share his information to everyone. He's not licensed in every state, but he's licensed in several, and he can help you in the other states if you want to know about financial planning, retirement planning. It's never too early to start thinking about retirement planning. He has 2 books out, Safe Money Matters and Bulletproof, both #1 best-selling books on Amazon on retirement planning. And you can get those books free if you'll just call 417-581-9222, 417-581-9222. Lisa will answer the phone and she'll get you taken care of. He has free consultations. He never charges for a consultation. And I use him. My family uses him. I have a lot of other friends that use him, business associates. You will never run out of life before you run out of money with his plans. I don't have to worry about the stock market. When I was younger, I bought aggressive stocks, made some money. But now I'm still making a good investment income every year, and all my money is protected. All my money is protected. So I highly recommend Brad Pistow. Okay, our second sponsor is Springfield Nissan and Springfield Kia. That is John Whittaker, used to be Youngblood Motor Group. John Youngblood retired. My last 2 cars I've bought from them, and they specialize in Nissans, Kias, and actually in the used car market, they specialize in cars that are certified. When you're going to buy a car, the new cars are so expensive anymore. A lot of people want to buy a used car. If I was going to buy a used car, I'd buy a certified used car, because that means they've gone through 110 points and making sure that that car is going to go down the road for many, many miles before you ever need anything done to it. So I highly recommend him. Their phone number is 417-882-3535. 417-882-3535. They're located at 3525 South Campbell. New cars on one side, just across the other side of Campbell is used cars, certified cars. And I tell you what, they have a 72-hour guarantee. You can have your car delivered, whatever you choose online or choose at the lot. They'll deliver your car to your driveway. You have 72 hours to drive it with the kids, the dog, the wife, everybody. Just take it. And if you don't like that car, they'll bring you another car. There's no other dealer. They've been in business 45 years, family owned, and there's no other dealer that will give you that 72-hour guarantee. So anyway, those are 2 sponsors. We're always looking for another sponsor that's usually long in business, probably an independent business, not box stores. But we like to promote those type of businesses that we know that will always do a great job for you. So now we're back on live with General Flynn again. And so, General, that last comment you made is really important. A lot of us have seen the movie. I think it's an hour and 5 minutes or something like that. And it's an American letter. It's a letter to the American church, a letter to the American church. It's a group of pastors and lay people that have really figured out exactly what you figured out. It's up to the churches now. It's up to the churches to save this country. And if we don't get more ministers preaching and telling their congregations what's really going on in this country, the Bible is not enough. You got to know the Bible. That's the foundation. But you got to know more. You actually got to know where the dangers are and what's going to happen to this country if we don't wake up, shape up, and do something positive. And so I'm telling you that we're going to have that show on in about 2 weeks, because we're going to show parts of that video. We're going to talk to the pastors, because exactly what you said is exactly what is important to this country today.
Yeah, the infiltration started in the 1920s. At the same time, General Flynn was talking about Stalin and Trotsky. The infiltrations in New York was with Harry Fosdick, who John D. Rockefeller Jr. funded to set up the Riverside Church. And what Fosdick was doing was introducing humanism into the pulpit. And at the same time, in New York, another former Baptist preacher named Francis Potter started the New York Humanist Society, which became the American Humanist Association. And John Dewey, who is an icon in American education, was on the board of Francis Potter. And John Dewey changed our American education system from teaching traditional academic subject matter for liberty and our own self-governance and freedom to social reconstruction, which was part of the whole socialist agenda coming over from the British Fabian Society in England. So I want to impress people that this is a highly orchestrated and well-funded effort that's been going on for 100 years. The same, Dewey went down to Mexico to defend Trotsky. That's how integrated our two stories are. And because they've been under the radar and well publicized from the media, I should say represented as well-meaning from the media, we've bought that story. And in fact, they are the enemies within. So I just want to share with you, General Flynn, that my husband's family is Byrne, and the family motto, the Irish motto, is Certavi et Vici. I struggled and I conquered, and I bless you with that motto as well. Somewhere in Ireland, we're related.
Sure.
And yeah, fight on.
Yeah. So we're going to end time, but I know that you're going to be in Branson. Yeah. You may not even know your own schedule until they tell you what your schedule is, because I know you're so busy. But I think either April 10th or April 11th. And I know our good friend, what day is it?
I think we get in there April 11th, Lynn. I think April 11th is the date that we're in there. And people can go to flynnmovie.com and see the exact date. And we will be posting the exact location in Branson here soon. I mean, some of it, sadly, we can't put the specific location right away just because of security. But we will be there on the 11th of April, and there's a gal by the name of Jill Reynolds who's been helping us.
Jill Reynolds, she's a good friend,
Yeah.
and I'm going to be posting a lot of things about that event. My wife and I, Janet, will be down there. We'll come see you and listen to you, and maybe even Matt. I don't know if we could do a little interview. Our volunteer producer, maybe we could just do a little 5 or 10 minute interview that we could continue to play and help you. Dr. Mary Byrne, you ought to go too.
Oh, I plan on going. Yes.
Yeah. So we're all going to go, and so we're real excited about that. That's Jill Reynolds. She has Brave Hearts Workshop.
If I could leave you guys with one thought, because I know we're going to end here, and it gets to what we've been talking about, and I want people, particularly, I want your listeners, all of them, Christians or not, I want people to understand how you will be judged. And I'm not a judge. I'm not the judge. This is well above judges in our judiciary system. But how a person is judged in life, I think, is such an important aspect of our mindset that we have to think about. All of us in life get knocked down at some point in time, whether you're a kid, whether you're an adult. Everybody has some time in their lives where they get knocked down. And you're not judged because you got knocked down. You're judged because you stood back up and you did something about it. That's how people should be judged. In my case, it's one of these things where I used to tell people in the military this, because I've lost guys, I've lost helicopters, everything. So it's not that a bad thing happens. It's what do you do about it? And you two guys, we are not the judges. The final judge will be the day you walk, as I believe and you're standing in front of the pearly gates, and you're asked, well, what did you do? Did you have a good life? Did you treat others like you want to be treated? And in our country, I do go back to something that JFK said, even though he's got all kinds of, imperfections, it's the old adage of it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. And I always talk about the destiny of our country will be determined by every single person who decides to do something that they have control of, right? I have control over certain things in my life. Most of us, most Americans, most regular Americans only have control over their lives in their communities. Well, then take control and do something more today than you did yesterday, because otherwise we are going to find ourselves like many other empires in the history of the world. We're just going to be in that dustbin of history, and people are going to be writing books about us 1,000 years from now about, well, what happened to the United States of America back at the turn of the 21st century.
Well, that's very good. So are we about out of time, Matt? Okay, we are out of time. General Flynn, I really, and Mary, really appreciate you giving our audience these words today. And we'll see you in Branson. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the honor.
That's what it means to really dream. 1, 2, 3. Can I get a hoorah from a patriot?